good morning, afternoon, or evening, whichever time it is that you may be viewing. We're here today to talk about the Team Associated Pro2 SC10. We're going to talk about what comes in the box, what you get with it, is it worth the money? We're going to talk about some racing stuff, what you need to race, experience from a novice driver, some track footage, and yeah, so let's just go ahead and dive right in. First off, it comes with these tires, which are great for the asphalt, great for the concrete. There is one thing that I would say is they're not so good on a track. They didn't do horrible on the track during this week while it was practice time, and the track was just super, super dry. It's a hard packed clay track. I mean, they didn't do bad because it was almost like driving on like bumpy concrete at that point, just because it was so dry. But race night, these are way, way too hard. They are, I mean, they're hard. They feel like real tires, not RC tires. So I did go ahead and pick up some J Concepts 3Ds in Super Soft for race night for my dad to drive on this so that it would get the traction it needed when the track got tacky and needed that higher bike grip, especially when it starts to get almost a little bit greasy at nighttime when that moisture comes back to the surface. So did do that, and I will say the very first thing that you're going to want to pick up for this, whether you race it or bash it, body clips. The body clips it comes with, I'm not even going to show them to you. They're the thinnest, tiniest things I think I've ever seen. That being said, it's pretty much the only complaint I have about this vehicle. I am thoroughly impressed with it. Let's get into what comes in the box, and then let's get into the truck. So what comes in the box is, of course, your Pro2 SC10 ready-to-run truck. We'll look under the hood here in just a moment, but this is the truck. These are the J Concepts 3Ds in super soft green compound, mounted onto the J Concepts Method wheels, of course in yellow because my 5-year-old's gonna be driving this, and I let him choose, and he said yellow wheels are faster. I said white wheels are faster. You can't win them all, guys. Sometimes your kids are just gonna choose the opposite thing of you. Yeah, it's part of life. The charger that it comes with is actually a pretty decent charger. It has normal banana plugs, so you can actually switch it out for something different if you've got other things to charge that aren't Dean's. It does have 2, 3, and 4S balance ports on the side. It can charge at 1, 2, and 3 amp. It can do LiPo or Life batteries, so it's actually pretty impressive that it does this. And it even, the light is red when it's charging. The light turns orange while it's balancing. You can see it flipping back and forth between which cell is balancing, and then it turns green when it's finished. It doesn't seem to degrade the charge rate like some chargers do that I've talked about on here before. It's pretty impressive. I mean, the battery that it comes with is this 3300 milliamp 30C Reedy Wolfpack. It does come with Dean's plugs. Sorry, T-plugs. These aren't actually Dean's plugs. So, you know, got to cut the corner somewhere when you're given a pretty decent vehicle for the price. These are pretty impressive. I mean, my son drove it for a Saturday, just practicing it with about 60% throttle, and he ran for an hour on this battery. I'm not saying that's going to be everybody's thing, because like I know when I drive it a lot harder at full throttle, and I'm pinning on it pretty good. But it ran for almost an hour with his drivability, and charge time was just over an hour, about an hour and 10 minutes charge time on this charger from a completely dead LiPo cutoff battery, which it cuts off with 4% left in it. Did that 3 times, and every time it had 4% left in it. So that's pretty awesome to see. All right, transmitter. So the transmitter that it comes with is this little guy here. It's kind of goofy looking. It actually feels pretty good in the hand. It's got a pretty small trigger. As you can see, it cups the finger pretty good. So for my 5-year-old, it's great. My dad actually even liked it. He's got really big hands. The steering wheel feels really good. The spring tension's nice and tight on it, so you can actually feel that steering really well. You do have your throttle trim, steering trim. You do have a steering dual rate and also a throttle EPA. So you can actually do your endpoint adjustment on your throttle as well. So you can actually have that full blast, or see here, have that full blast, turn it down a little ways, but it's really nice to be able to control that. It's kind of got this little cool brake rotor thing in there too, which is not needed, but it's kind of slick. So I like that. You gotta have a nice little touch when you got a ready to run radio. It's not a bad radio. It's pretty nice. It takes 4 double A's, but you can pull this out and put in a life pack. So if you don't want to deal with double A's, you can put in a life pack on a ready to run radio. That alone is impressive. Latency seems to be pretty good on it. It kind of moved when I moved. There was only a very, very minimal latency. I didn't really notice it once I got driving. On a two-wheel drive, I don't really notice the latency a ton anyway, because you're not quite as nimble as some four-wheel drive stuff. The truck itself, standard style, short course, pins on the hood go forward, pins on the back are sideways. Sometimes I wish the pins on the hood were sideways too. That way you can, not lose them when you roll over. The body held up to the torture of about 5 battery packs of a 5-year-old driving it. And then my dad drove it, who's never driven before. He drove it Saturday night. There's a little crack in the back here on this side, right there. Aside from that, I don't really see anything wrong with this. I mean, you can see that there's some tire rub, but that's just because the shocks are so soft out of the box. But I wanted to run this box stock to see how it did. He didn't get last place in rookie, which is pretty cool. He is one of the only two-wheel drive trucks out there. They were all four-wheel drive trucks. One other person was running a two-wheel drive, but it was mostly four-wheel drive trucks, so that was pretty cool to see that he didn't get last place on his first time driving. Only damage that the vehicle took was sky wheelied off of a triple when the wind gust came up, landed right on the rear bumper, and broke that bumper spring. Honestly, that's not bad, considering the fact that this thing was beat the ever-living crap out of it. It rolled over, it flipped a bunch, there's nothing bent, everything seems to be good. I literally didn't even clean this because I wanted you to see what it looked like coming off the track after a full night of racing. I'm getting dirt all over the place. We're just going to ignore that. It's really not bad. The slipper, typical ready-to-run slipper on associated vehicles, the plates that are in there are kind of hard, so there's not really a lot of slip to it. It's fairly loose, and it still is, it's on. I would say if you're going to do any other upgrades besides tires, the very first upgrade that I would do is upgrade that slipper assembly either to the factory team one, or better yet, to the Shell Racing Innovations 3-plate design. That one is a phenomenal thing. I will be running this here very soon. I'm not allowed to run rookie class because when you've been a sponsored driver, you're not allowed to run rookie class. Can't say I blame them. I don't think I would even want to run rookie class in this if I had stock tires on it, because I probably still would not be a fair competition. So I'd have to run in Pro 2. Our Pro 2 is what they call our two-wheel drive short course here. It is a 17.5 motor limit. This comes with a Pro2 SC10 brushless waterproof speed controller and a 3300. Actually, I'm not sure if this is waterproof or not. I'll have to look that up for sure, and I'll let you know later. It is a pretty decent speed controller, though, and a 3300 kV 4-pole motor, which comes out to about a 13.5. Our track is 17.5 blinky mode for a two-wheel drive short course. I'm going to pick up a Hobby Wing just stock that's like $100 and drop that in here so that my son can race it and I can race it. We have 2 Thursday night races left this year for club races, and we have 1 2-day event that is a big race called Chill on the Hill. Then it's going to be snow until May. The joys of northern Minnesota. Eh? Our track is kind of a mix of red clay and sand. It's quite a bit of rock in it as well, because unfortunately, unless you're going to spend the money to get sifted, which is crazy expensive when there's the amount of rock that you have up here, you just kind of have to deal with that. So you don't want too crazy low of a ride height. The truck itself, aside from the tires and putting in the transponder here, didn't really do a whole lot to it. I did lower the shock position because it comes on the center hole on the rear tower and the center hole on the front tower. I lowered those down, and I moved the rear shock location on the arm to the outer location just to get those shocks to lay down a little bit more. Because I had a feeling it was going to be high bite when the track was watered, I went ahead and laid those down to get that better side bite. I also increased the front camber to -2 degrees. It looks like a lot more in here. Once it's on the ground, you can see it's -2. And the rear to -1.5. So the camber angle on the front and rear I adjusted, and the shock position. I went down to a 2mm clip in the front shock. I added another 4mm clip in the rear shock. These are the clip style. Unlike the old SC10s, these have 12mm shocks, not 10mm. I remember the old SC10s back in like 2009, 2010 when I first started. That was my first truck. They were very small. They basically were 10 scale buggy shocks on a truck. These are 12 millimeter though, so they feel a lot better. It has a pretty good action to it. I'll flip the camera over so you can see the truck and kind of point some stuff out on it. Overall, for a ready to run vehicle, this thing drives great. It handles great. Just minor tuning adjustments is all I did just for our track. It has plenty of power. The steering servo, though it's not fast and it has not enough torque to whip it, you can get it to move a little bit. If you hit the brake and turn really hard to try to whip it in the air if you're setting up for a corner, you can kind of get it to do that. The biggest complaint I would say as far as driving and handling is this thing parachutes like crazy. So you can see I cut out on each side there with an X-Acto wire at the track last night. Because we had about a 10-mile-an-hour breeze, it was wanting to do this every time it went in the air. And so I did that, and that kind of kept it to where it was just at a little bit of an angle. It's the disadvantage of a rear motor truck because all that weight is on the back here, and it just wants to lift up. That being said, this track, when it's not wet, is it's very groove and dry, but it's very loamy when you get out of the race line. Having a softer rear end, rear motor truck actually seems to help over a mid-motor truck because you get that rear bite that you kind of need on a two-wheel drive. Let's get you moved around here and we'll kind of look at the truck. All right, so as you can see here on the front end, once I have it down, you can see that camber angle is about a -2 degree. The steering angle is pretty good. There's actually a little bit of positive Ackerman on the inner tire of the steering angle, which is pretty awesome. That is something that I did not expect to see out of a ready to run. I was very shocked at that. This also has the screw-through pivot balls, which are fantastic. Those rod ends are screwed through to the pivot balls, so you don't have to worry about trying to snap your rod ends off to adjust your pivot balls or to be able to put in, like let's say you're wanting to adjust your roll center and you want to move lower your roll center, so you want to move your rear turnbuckle height up. You don't have to pop the ball end off to unscrew the pivot ball to add in your ball stud washer to lower that center of gravity. You can literally just reach in, unscrew it, put your ball stud washer in, screw it back in. So that saves a lot of time over the old ones that had the old 440 pivot balls that snapped on and then they broke every time you tried to snap them and you had to replace them with the RPMs. These are the really good, nice quality ones like what they put on their race kits. You can see these are that nice gray graphite nylon that they use. I honestly can't say anything bad about them. It does come with a turnbuckle wrench, which is perfect, so you can adjust your turnbuckles. I was really happy to see that all of the turnbuckles are put on with the line that's etched on them all on this side of the vehicle, so every line is on that side. So you turn them all the same direction for in or out on your toe, camber, whatever you need to adjust. It's very impressive and very nice to see vehicles that have time taken into them to put them together, not just slap together. Because that line is on the side that's reverse thread, so it's a left-hand thread instead of a right-hand thread. So that's something that not a lot of companies do, and I was excited to see that on this. Let me get you a different angle, and we'll take a look here. All right, so now we're back here. The one thing that I would say that I didn't do that I probably will before the next time out, the shocks, as you can tell, there's not a lot of rebound. They're very thin. Same with the rear. There's like no rebound. It settles good, but they're very squishy. You can hear the air in there. There's a lot of air in them. It's probably 20 or 25 weight oil. I would say probably 25 weight, maybe 27 and a half. I think they claim that it's 30, but if it's 30, it's only half full. Because this definitely needs 30, 32 and a half, maybe even 35. Probably 30 in the front and 32 and a half in the rear is what I'm going to do. The rear diff has pretty decent diff action. For being a gear diff, I was surprised to see it not be a ball diff. I think the old ready to runs were also gear diffs, but I prefer ball diffs like the factory team had. They do have the rubber grommet that pops right off to reach your slipper assembly so you can adjust your slipper clutch. Everything on here is made of better components than the old SC10s from 2008 to 2011, 2012, somewhere around there. So if you're from the era of those and you're like, man, I want to get my kid one of these, but I remember the old SC10s being brittle, these are not. I was so impressed with the beating that this took. We have some track footage that you're going to see here in a little bit, and this thing was so impressive. It's the same kind of shock towers and arms that like your race kits have, that same type of material, and it's not an aluminum pan with a mid-motor design and the lay-down transmissions, things like that. Obviously, the servo could use some help. It's very slow, very weak, but it is a Metal Gear servo, so that is kind of nice. You don't have to worry about stripping it. And it does have a pretty decent servo saver on here as well. So that is nice as well. And as you can see here, there is a shielding on the switch. This does have a gyro in it to help it steer a little bit, but it's not near as crazy as like the Spectrum or the Traxxas ones that when you get sideways, it full-on counter steers. It only moves about that much. It gives you a very slight. You can adjust the gain levels on it. This one must be set very, very low because it's almost non-existent, which is what I prefer for somebody starting out driving, because they're going to have to get to the point where they can't run it anyway. So it's best to just basically have it not there so that you can get used to kind of how the truck feels, and then you can start to counter steer into it a little bit more. Here's the rear end. You can see that brake right there. You can see how that rear end is designed. One nice thing over the old ready-to-runs, that if you had one of the old SC10 ready-to-runs, you're going to be surprised with this. These are captured CVDs. These are not dog bones. I was so shocked to see captured CVDs on a ready-to-run that has always been a dog bone truck. Like, these were always the dog bones where you had a drive cup over here and a drive cup over here and the dog bone that set in between them, and they'd pop out all the time anytime there'd be any type of flex to the arm, enough to get that to flex out and it'd right out of there. That's super awesome to see. I'm glad to see some sort of upgrade like that is making this a better truck for somebody to get into this class, into two-wheel drive short course, without having to drop in a bunch of extra stuff. Another good thing is it does come with extra clips. You can actually stiffen these up even more. It does not come with extra springs. It does come with extra clips though. It comes with the tools that you need to work on it. That's pretty much it. The only thing it didn't come with was AA batteries. So I had to get some AA batteries, but if you have a Sam's Club, you can get a massive amount of AA batteries for not a bad price. On the bottom side here, here's the chassis after a few battery packs and a full night of racing. As you can see, it's pretty durable. It took some scratches, but nothing major, no big cracks, no big gashes. As you know, the old weak point on the SC10 was this spot right here where it would snap on the chassis and you'd have to get a new chassis for it every time. They actually added some 90-degree angle up into this so that it doesn't do that as bad. Plus, the top plate goes up just like on the buggies and comes all the way through so that you don't get that total nose flex like you used to get. It used to flex right there at the nose and then it would just snap right off. And this doesn't do that. And that's super, super nice to see. Honestly, I can't really find much bad about this truck. For a ready-to-run, this is probably one of the best ready-to-run. Now, here's the real kicker on this. This thing is, and you cannot beat it for the price. There are other ready-to-runs out there that are cheaper, but they're not built to the quality that this is. I am so shocked at this. What's crazy is the 2 and the 4-wheel drive are the same price. My dad is going to get a 4-wheel drive because he didn't really care for the driving style of the 2-wheel drive. He's definitely more of a throttle happy kind of person, a lot of this. So I told him, I was like, 4-wheel drive runs more of that kind of styles where you got to kind of goose it to get it around corners. So he's probably going to get the 4-wheel drive. The 2-wheel drive and the 4-wheel drive are both the same price. Currently, as of right now, which is September of 2024, it is $329.99 for the 2-wheel drive without battery and charger and the 4-wheel drive, or $399.99, so just under $400 for the kit that comes with the Wolfpack 3300 and this decent charger. Those are awesome. I got a second battery for this as well. I want to say it was like $40 or something like that from my local hobby shop. Yes, they're not great batteries. They're not race packs. They're not going to punch out a ton of amps and get you that high C rating. But for what this is, which is a rookie learn to drive vehicle, these are phenomenal. And unlike some brands, they're hard case. You know what brands I'm talking about. They say, here's a battery, and it's a soft case. You can't race a soft case because it's against the rules, because soft cases, one slight tear, big fire. As in your truck melts that you just spent a bunch of money on, and you can't race it, or it melts somebody else's truck, and then you have to pay them, or worse, it tears, catches fire, burns a Marshall, and then that Marshall is like, hey, you're paying my medical bills. Just saying, said company. Hard pack batteries in your ready-to-runs, because not everybody wants to just play in their backyard. Some people want to race their vehicles too. You know what company I'm talking about. I'm not going to say them because they do make some cool stuff. They do some good stuff for entry-level people. That particular thing, though, is not okay. We need to have hard packs in all ready-to-runs. The only thing we should ever be seeing a soft pack in is an airplane. See that big orange book right there? This says ROAR and IFMAR. I've got all the rules for all the classes, for tracks, everything. Every single category in that huge binder of papers, hard case, lipo required. It doesn't matter if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, whatever cell, which everything there is 1, 2, or 4. It's got to be hard pack lipo. So why even give soft pack lipos with cars? It's the most ignoramus thing I've ever seen. And yes, I know that's not a real word, but it's fine. Sorry, I had to get some coffee and kind of calm down. We've went over this. Told you pretty much all there is to tell about it. Oh, there's one other thing that I would change on here. It does come with nylock screws for your, or screws. That's not a screw. It comes with nylock nuts for your wheels. Some brands don't give you nylock nuts. They give you just regular roll 4mm nuts that don't have a nylock in them. I wish that they were also serrated a little heavier. As you can see, there is a slight serration to the back. You can kind of tell there a little bit. It's not deep enough to really grab into the rim though. You see they held up pretty good. Not a bad glue job considering I haven't glued a tire in 4 years. Got a little messy, but there's dirt everywhere in here right now. It's pretty crazy. Track conditions last night, they did water the track. They blew it off between each round, and then they just blew it off between round 2 and the mains. Track was very tacky, very grippy in the line, very fluffy outside of the line. So the Super Soft did quite well, aside from the fact that Dad being in the novice class was in the first class. You can tell they took on a fair amount of mud. It was very kind of sloppy after they wet the track. And I just didn't clean it after the race day because I wanted you to see what it looks like after a race day. So you do have to kind of blow it off, brush it off, do all that. But here it is without the wheels. That right there is what I would change. So the front hubs are steel. You could switch you could switch those out for aluminum, but that would just make the front end lighter. I mean, granted, it's steel to aluminum, so it's not a massive amount, but you're still talking roughly 8 to 10 grams lighter by switching those out to aluminum, and even lighter if you switch to titanium. I would leave them the steel just because this does need as much front weight as possible. I would probably pull this foam block that's in the battery tray out. If the track stayed as tacky as it was last night, I would cut this in half. I'd put half of it behind the battery, and I would run the battery about middle. Probably even putting one of the brass plates underneath of it just to help try to middle weight this because it did do this so much. It was getting tons of traction. It was actually lifting the front end up off the ground. That tells me that it needs a little bit more weight to the front. So there's that. But the rear hubs here are plastic. They do make factory team aluminum clamping ones, which I would go ahead and replace that with those. They are I believe these are the 7mm depth. So definitely just replace those with the aluminum ones. They're literally like $8 for the pair of them. It's probably one of the best upgrades you can do because it replaces this with aluminum. You don't have to worry about hitting that throttle so hard that this just strips out inside the wheel or something. That probably wouldn't happen, but better safe than sorry. Another good thing about this is when I open this up, I did pull this cover off. The gear mesh in here is perfect. I'll go ahead and pull this off and show you. Here is that slipper assembly that it comes with. You can see that slipper clutch. There is a white plate here and a white plate on the inside with another steel plate on it. These white plates are almost like a really hard felt. They have yellow ones that are a little softer on their Octalock. The yellow ones I would prefer. They're a little bit better to be able to actually adjust your slipper because if you notice that slipper nut, that spring isn't even pushed down at all. It is literally on the edge of the shaft. This should have slip to it. It does not. It's on like that. So there is no slip. But if you look here, the pinion is I don't know if you can hear it, but there's that perfect little tap in there. That is a perfect mesh. You don't want it too tight. I explained this in one of my older In the Groove RC videos, but you don't want a tight mesh because it does this. And when it does this, you end up snapping teeth off. You don't want it out here because then it just chips the end of teeth off and it shears it. Having it right here where there's just that little bit of click, but it's almost all the way in, is perfect because then you get that nice free rotation. And that's how you want your mesh to be set. Some people do the fold a piece of paper in half, make sure it's nice and crisp, put it in there, slam them together, tighten it down, tighten your motor down, and then roll that piece of paper out, and then you should have that little click. That sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, depending on how hard you mash it in there. You can get it still too tight. So the best way to do it is just by eyeballing it. It does come with that there. I'm not 100% positive what the pinion gear is on here. I want to say it's a 1986. I'm not sure. It may be a little bit different than that, but I'm pretty sure it's a 1986. But yeah, it is a really good kit for the money. So with all that said, here is some footage from last night's race. The wet track will be the race night, and the light track will be from practice day. Until next time, keep the shiny side up, the rubber side down, and remember to stay in the groove.